many mics up here to choose from. Hello. So for those of you who were here last week, our two speakers, Eric and Emily, got to introduce our series of Jesus' miracles in the Gospel of John. And I get to continue that tonight. And as I look out, I see a lot of familiar faces, which is great. That means I'm starting to get to know a lot more of you. But it's also exciting to see a lot of new faces. That is great. But sadly, for those of you who don't know me, that means that you don't know how to stay on my good side. So I thought I would help you out and give you a few hints before I started my talk tonight. And to do that, I'm going to start with an excerpt from my favorite book of all time. A great dread fell on him, as if he was awaiting the pronouncement of some doom that he had long foreseen and vainly hoped might after all never be spoken. An overwhelming longing to rest and reign at peace by Bilbo's side in Rivendell filled all his heart. At last with an effort he spoke, and wondered to hear his own words, as if some other will was using his small voice. "I will take the ring," he said, "though I do not know the way." Elrond raised his eyes and looked at him, and Frodo felt his heart pierced by the sudden keenness of the glance. "If I understand aright all that I have heard," he said, "I think that this task is appointed for you, Frodo, and that if you do not find a way, no one will. This is the hour of the Shire folk, when they arise from their quiet fields to shake the towers and councils of the great. Who of all the wise could have foreseen it? Or, if they are wise, why should they expect to know it until the hour has struck? But it is a heavy burden, so heavy that none could lay it on another. I do not lay it on you, but if you take it freely, I will say that your choice is right. And though all the mighty elf friends of old were assembled together, your seat should be among them. But you won't send him off alone, surely, master," cried Sam, unable to contain himself any longer, and jumping up from the corner where he had been sitting quietly on the floor. "No, indeed," said Elrond, turning towards him with a smile. "You at least shall go with him. It is hardly possible to separate you from him, even when he is summoned to a secret council and you are not." Sam sat down, blushing and muttering, "A nice pickle we have landed ourselves in, Mr. Frodo," he said, shaking his head. Woo! Okay, so in case that wasn't a big enough hint for you, here's a couple more. This book and the following books were made into a couple of really awesome movies several years back. And in these movies, all the wonderful characters were portrayed by, I thought, brilliant actors. And the prequel novel to this one was actually released as a movie in this past December. And if you can't tell by the slides that have been going on behind me, it is The Lord of the Rings. And I'm obsessed with Lord of the Rings and have been since junior high when my brother introduced me to it. I saw each of the original movies 5 times in theaters, but only saw The Hobbit 3 times, so I have to catch up when the next one comes out. I made a scrapbook of all of my ticket stubs and newspaper clippings and Valentines, just to prove how big of a fan I was. And I actually own a pair of elf ears that I like to glue on for special occasions like the midnight premiere of The Hobbit. Sadly, I don't have a picture of those, otherwise I really would have shown you me with my elf ears on. And the characters in these books are really great because they like to party. They like to have a good time, and if any of you have read or seen The Hobbit, you know that it starts out with the dwarves coming over to Bilbo's house, and they eat all his food, and they drink all his ale, and they sing a lot of songs, and they threaten to just bring the house down. And in another great book, the Bible, was I put a slide up there? I don't remember. In the Bible, Jesus also likes to party, and the first miracle that he performs, which I get to tell you about, takes place at a wedding where everyone was dancing and singing and eating and drinking and having a good old time. So the party, though, is not the main point of this miracle. The point is actually that Jesus is invited to and then transforms something ordinary into something awesome. And Jesus uses his miracle to show his love of transformation. On the 3rd day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." So as you can tell, this is only the beginning of the passage because I didn't want you to look at the miracle prematurely. Also, Jesus does call his mother woman, but this is actually a term of respect, not an insult. This is not an excuse for you to try that on your own mother. So, this section of the passage sets the stage for a miracle that we will see shortly. We see that Jesus was invited to the wedding, along with his mother and his disciples. That tells us that Jesus knew the people who were getting married, and they knew him and his family. So it's possible this is someone Jesus even grew up with in his community over the years. Mary then points out the fact that they have run out of wine, which is in fact a really big deal. Because wedding celebrations then didn't last for a couple of hours, but a couple of days. So to run out of wine before the end of the celebration was really, really embarrassing, and not so much fun for the guests. So Mary invites Jesus to do something about the wine. Last year, when I was an intern here, I came into the year with a lot of expectations, thinking I knew what I'd be doing, and I thought I even knew what areas Jesus would have me grow in. But as the year went on, I faced a lot of choices and a lot of circumstances, and I realized I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know where my life was headed. And this really frustrated me, so I felt really stuck, not knowing where my life was headed. My supervisor noticed this and invited me to try life coaching. Now, there are probably some of you who have heard of life coaching because Oprah likes to talk about her own life coach. This is not where I heard about life coaching, though. The first time I heard about life coaching... See, not that. First time I heard about life coaching was, of course, at an InterVarsity staff conference. And for those of you who, like me before, don't know what life coaching is, a simple definition is you have a coach, they help you set a goal, and that goal is hopefully going to be completed by the end of your sessions with your coach. So for me, my sessions were once a week for 12 weeks. And after the first week of meeting, I came up with the goal, a really simple goal. I wanted to decide what I wanted to do with my life. After that, things got interesting, but before I tell you how interesting they got, I'm going to show you what Jesus did about the wine problem. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," so they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." Jesus does something amazing by turning this water into wine. No one saw exactly how it happened or when it happened. It could have been when the water got put in the jars, it could have been when the servants drew it out, or it could have been when the master of the banquet actually tasted it. We don't know. All we know is that Jesus, without so much as lifting a finger, turns approximately 150 gallons of water into wine. That's pretty significant. And that's the first transformation that he performs that night. Now, this is a pretty gutsy move, having this water that's been transformed into wine served to the master of the banquet. And to show you just how gutsy, I'm going to give you a modern-day example from my brother's wedding, which was just 3 weeks ago. So, I'm shameless and wanted to show off my brother and his new wife because they're adorable. But so, let's say at their reception I bring my own wine. And about halfway through the reception, I decide to have it served to the mother of the bride, who is the equivalent because she's in charge of making sure everything goes according to plan. So she tastes the wine and then pulls my brother aside. And she tells him, "This is really interesting. You're serving the best wine now after all of the toasts have already been given, and even though the reception was already catered." So for the master of the banquet, tasting this wine transformed his opinion of both the wedding reception and the bride and groom. And that's the second transformation that Jesus performed. Now, in my life coaching experience, we started out, after I set my goal, asking a lot of questions and diving into how we could figure out why I was stuck and how to move forward. My life coach was brilliant and asked a lot of good questions and figured out that I was dealing with stuff from junior high when I was very severely bullied. And so she realized then, and I realized, which I didn't know, that during junior high I made the decision to become invisible, to avoid anything that would draw attention to myself in order to protect myself from getting made fun of. And I was still doing this last year. So as time went on, we decided to start setting little goals that I could complete each week. An example of one of those goals would be at one of the intern meetings. I had to share my thought or opinion on something, but I couldn't wait to be the last person to do it, which I always did in hopes that they wouldn't actually make me share anything. Another goal that we set was when I went to a conference, I had to talk to someone new. I couldn't just stay and talk to the people that I went with. So I kept taking these risks and stepping out and becoming visible, and the interns and my supervisors noticed the changes that were happening in me, and they encouraged me in that, which gave me the courage to continue taking more risks. But before I tell you how my life coaching experience ended, I'm going to go back and show you how the story with Jesus ended. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and brothers and his disciples. There they stayed for a few days. So, despite this being the end of the passage, the story doesn't end there. We don't know what happened with the wine and the guests, but we are told that this is the first miracle that Jesus performs, implying that there are going to be more miracles he continues to do, which will continue to reveal his glory, showing that he is the Son of God. We're told that the disciples put their faith in him, so this also shows that they'll continue to be part of the story. And as this story isn't done, my story isn't either. My life coaching came to an end, and because of the transformation that took place, I was able to decide to come on staff with InterVarsity. And even though my life coaching ended and I don't have a coach to set goals for me, I still set my own goals to continue helping me, to keep me from hiding, really, because that would be the easy option. I continue to take risks this year, such as leading the prayer team, as Matt said earlier, and reaching out in love to the LGBT community here on campus. Jesus has been about transformation since the beginning. He transformed his disciples' lives by calling them out of their old jobs to follow him. He transformed the water into wine, lots of it, and he transformed the master's opinion of the banquet and the bride and groom. As I said, the story isn't over. We don't know what happened with the wine and the guests. We don't know if the wine was actually served to them, and if they were even able to tell the difference between the good wine and bad wine anymore. The story keeps going without us knowing the ending, and that's the point. Jesus loves transformation, but doesn't like to tell us how it's going to end. In my own life, I've seen him transform my past from junior high to make way for a future I could never have imagined. And I'm not the only one. All of us here, each one of you, also is in the middle of your own transformation story. Jesus has been working in your life and changing you from the person you were at the beginning of this year from the person you were in high school. Some of you, like me, can recognize that transformation, while others of you may not be as sure of it. But you are being transformed, and those stories should be told to the people on campus because they give them hope. There are people on this campus that need hope that they won't always be where they are right now or who they are right now. And I want to give you an opportunity right now to begin telling those stories to each other. So right now, I want you to split up into groups of 3 people. And I want each of you to take 2 minutes and share a story from the past year of how Jesus has transformed you. So go ahead, get into the groups of 3, and share those stories. I challenge all of us this week to share our transformation story that we shared tonight with someone new this week. I mean, if I can do it up here in front of, I don't even know how many of you there are, then all of us should be able to share it with one person this week. Now, to close, I want to take time and I want to celebrate these stories. So I'm going to have the worship team come back up, and we are going to celebrate like the hobbits and the dwarves and the elves.